When I was 16, my first date ended in disaster. I was finally out with Jason, a boy I really liked, sharing milkshakes and laughter, until my mom showed up. She pulled up a chair, interrogated Jason, and humiliated me in front of everyone. Jason left early, and I never heard from him again. That night taught me painful lessons about boundaries and independence. Now at 26, I've learned to protect my space, and I want other teens to know, your voice matters. My name's Emily, and born and raised in a small town in Indiana, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody and secrets don't last long. I'm telling this story because, honestly, it's one of those moments that still makes me cringe when I think about it. The night my mom completely hijacked what was supposed to be the most magical evening of my teenage life, my very first date. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop your city and your local time in the comments below. Looking back, it all started so innocently. I had never even thought about dating until I met Jason. Jason wasn't the kind of boy you'd expect to turn heads. He wasn't on the football team or part of any of the popular cliques that ruled the hallways of Mill Creek High. He was quiet, a little awkward, but had this kind smile and warm brown eyes that made me feel seen, like really seen. We first spoke during group work in biology class. I remember the way he handed me the worksheet, his fingers brushing mine for just a second, and how my heart did this weird little flip. It was ridiculous, I know, but at 16, that moment felt like the beginning of something monumental. From there, it was small glances exchanged across the classroom, casual hey in the hallways, and the occasional like on each other's Instagram posts. My best friend, Katie, swore he liked me, but I wasn't so sure. Then one afternoon, as I was stuffing my books into my locker, Jason came up behind me. His voice was soft, nervous even, as he asked if I wanted to hang out that Friday. Just the two of us. I think I said yes way too quickly, my cheeks burning as I tried to play it cool. Inside, though, I was screaming. This was it. My first real date. The next few days felt like a whirlwind of excitement and anxiety. I kept replaying our brief conversation over and over in my head, analyzing every word, every smile. What did he mean by hang out? Was it a date? Would he try to hold my hand? Should I offer to pay for my milkshake if we went to the diner? These were the kinds of thoughts that consumed me that entire week. At night, I lay awake, my mind racing with possibilities. Would he think I was boring? What if I had food stuck in my teeth? What if I said something stupid? Katie, of course, was my confidant through all of it. We spent hours on FaceTime picking out possible outfits. I didn't have a massive wardrobe, but I tried on every decent piece I owned. There was the floral dress that felt too formal, the jeans that hugged my hips just right but made me feel self-conscious about my thighs, and the soft pink sweater that Jason once complimented when we passed in the hall. In the end, I settled on the sweater, skinny jeans, and my favorite boots. Simple, comfortable, and hopefully cute in that I didn't try too hard kind of way. Friday afternoon arrived, and my nerves were at an all-time high. My mom noticed, of course. My mom always noticed everything. She had this sixth sense when it came to me, and usually, that was comforting. But not today. Today, it felt like she had a magnifying glass on my every move. As I dabbed on a little mascara and lip gloss, she stood in the doorway of my room, arms crossed, one eyebrow raised. "Where exactly are you going tonight?" she asked, her voice calm but laced with that tone that told me she didn't approve. "We're just going to the diner. Maybe see a movie." "Nothing wild, Mom," I said, trying to sound casual while my heart pounded. "Who's driving? Who's this boy? What's his last name? Have I met his parents?" The questions came rapid fire, each one tightening the knot in my stomach. I knew this wouldn't be easy. My mom wasn't the type to just say, "Sure, have fun." She worried always. And after Dad left us when I was 8, that worry turned into something fierce, something almost protective to the point of suffocation. She wanted to shield me from every possible hurt, every disappointment, and in doing so, sometimes she forgot I needed to live my own moments. I told her everything she wanted to know, Jason's full name, where he lived, how he was in my bio class and on the yearbook committee. That seemed to pacify her, but only a little. She insisted on driving me to the diner and picking me up after. I tried to argue, gently, but she wouldn't budge. Finally, after what felt like hours of negotiation, she agreed I could go, but under one condition. She would be in the area in case I needed anything. I tried to tell myself that was normal, that maybe other moms did that too. Deep down, though, I felt the first flicker of dread. I should have known better. As I waited for Jason to text that he was on his way, I took one last look in the mirror, my palms sweaty, my heart beating so loudly I was sure my mom could hear it from downstairs. I grabbed my jacket, phone, and purse, and took a deep breath. Tonight was supposed to be special. My first taste of teenage freedom, my first step into the world of dating. I wanted it to be perfect, to be mine. And at that moment, I believed, with all the hope and innocence of a 16-year-old girl, that maybe, just maybe it would be. What came next? Well, that's the part that changed everything. I woke up that morning with a sense of anticipation, so strong it felt like Christmas Eve and the first day of summer vacation all rolled into one. My alarm barely had a chance to buzz before I was already staring at the ceiling, heart racing, mind spinning through every possible scenario of the night ahead. Would Jason smile when he saw me? Would we laugh easily? Or would it be awkward silences and forced small talk? The possibilities were endless, and for once, I didn't care that I was overthinking. It was my first date, and I wanted to savor every delicious, terrifying second of the build-up. The sunlight spilled through my curtains, casting a warm glow over my room. Everything felt brighter, more alive. I could hear Mom downstairs, the clatter of dishes, the faint hum of the morning news. I took my time getting ready, even though I wasn't supposed to meet Jason until later. I did everything I could to calm my nerves, playing my favorite playlist, scrolling through Pinterest for first date tips, even texting Katie a dozen times about how nervous I was. She sent back heart emojis and little pep talks that made me smile. She was rooting for me. Everyone was. Everyone except, maybe, the person whose opinion mattered most. When I finally emerged from my room, Mom was at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in hand, eyes sharp and alert in a way that made my stomach knot. She looked up at me and tilted her head, as if trying to read my thoughts. And then came the questions. "So, remind me again, what's this boy's last name?" she asked, her tone light but her gaze heavy. I told her. Again. Just like I had the night before. Jason Miller. Quiet kid, good grades, yearbook staff, no criminal record, at least as far as I knew. But that wasn't enough. And his family? "What are they like?" she continued, tapping her mug with her fingernail. That soft, rhythmic click made me more anxious than any of her words. I hesitated because, honestly, I didn't know. I'd never met his parents. I barely knew anything about them beyond what Jason mentioned in passing. I said as much, and Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "And where exactly are you two going again?" "The diner." "Yes, but after that?" "What movie?" "Who else will be there?" Each question felt like a test I hadn't studied for. I tried to answer them as best I could. We hadn't decided on a movie yet. No one else was joining us. Just us. That's kind of what made it special. I thought maybe that would make her see how important this was to me. But all it did was deepen the crease between her eyebrows. She nodded, sipped her coffee, and said nothing for a long moment. I stood there, fidgeting with the hem of my sleeve, waiting for the next interrogation. Instead, she simply said, "All right, just be smart, Emily. Remember what we talked about." And that should have been it. But the rest of the day felt off. It was little things at first. The way she watched me every time I crossed the room, as if memorizing my face. The way she kept finding reasons to walk past my room or peek in. Laundry to put away, windows to check. Vacuuming she hadn't done in years suddenly became urgent. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, that she was just being protective like always. But something about her energy was different that day. Like she was bracing for something, or planning something. As the evening approached, I could feel the tension radiating off her like heat from a fire. When I came downstairs, dressed and ready to go, she looked me over from head to toe. Her eyes softened for a second, just a second, and I thought maybe she'd let me go without any more drama. But then she said almost too casually, "I might run a few errands in town tonight. If you need me, just call. I'll be close." My heart sank. I forced a smile, hoping it would cover the unease crawling up my spine. "Okay, Mom. Thanks." I stepped out onto the porch, the cool evening air wrapping around me like a promise of freedom. Jason's car was already pulling up to the curb, and I felt my nerves shift into excitement again. I gave Mom a quick wave and hurried down the steps, trying not to look back. But I felt her gaze, heavy on my back. Watching, always watching. The ride to the diner was everything I'd hoped it would be. Jason was sweet and funny in that quiet way of his. He asked about my favorite books, told me a hilarious story about his dog knocking over the Christmas tree, and even complimented my sweater. For a little while, I forgot about the strange morning, about Mom's hovering presence. I let myself sink into the moment, into the possibility that maybe this would be as wonderful as I dreamed. But then the signs started. At first, I brushed them off as coincidence. A silver SUV that looked a lot like Mom's following a few car lengths behind as we drove down Main Street. A glimpse of what I thought was her coat, familiar dark green with a fraying cuff, at the entrance of the mall when Jason and I walked through to kill time before the movie. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. Plenty of people drove silver SUVs. Lots of women owned green coats. And yet, each sighting chipped away at my sense of ease. Jason didn't seem to notice. Or if he did, he didn't say anything. Maybe he chalked it up to small-town life, where seeing familiar faces was as common as spotting squirrels in the park. I tried to do the same. I laughed a little too loudly at his jokes, focused a little too hard on what he was saying. Anything to drown out the sinking feeling in my chest. The final straw was at the diner. We just slid into a booth by the window, menus in hand, when I caught sight of her through the glass. Across the street, standing by the corner store, pretending to look at the window display, but her eyes were on me. I froze. Jason noticed then, following my gaze. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. I forced a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Yeah, just thought I saw someone I knew. It's nothing." It wasn't nothing. But I didn't want to ruin the night. I didn't want to admit that my mom might actually be following me, spying on me, incapable of letting me have this one moment to myself. I told myself it was fine, that she'd go home soon, that I could ignore it, that I could salvage this. But deep down, I think I knew. I knew this night wasn't mine anymore. I just didn't want to believe it. Not yet. Not until it was too late. When Jason pulled up to the curb, my heart felt like it skipped a beat. His car, a beat-up Honda Civic that I'd always thought was kind of charming in its own way, came to a stop, and he leaned over to open the passenger door for me. His smile was soft, a little nervous, but it made my breath catch in my throat. In that moment, it wasn't just Jason Miller from bio class. It was Jason, the boy who had chosen me, who wanted to spend time with me. I slid into the seat, careful not to trip over my own feet, and closed the door. For a second, we just looked at each other, both of us probably wondering if this was as surreal for the other as it was for ourselves. Then he grinned, that crooked, adorable grin that I'd replayed 1,000 times in my head since he asked me out, and said, "Hey." Just that. Simple. But it set me at ease in a way I hadn't expected. I felt my shoulders relax, the tension in my jaw easing as I returned the smile. "Hey." As we pulled away from my house, I caught a final glimpse of Mom standing by the window. Her arms were crossed, face unreadable, a shadow behind the glass. I quickly looked away, determined to focus on Jason, on the night ahead, on the chance to feel like any other 16-year-old girl on her first date. Jason was easy to talk to. The car ride to the diner was filled with light chatter, small talk that felt natural rather than forced. He asked me about my favorite movies, and I admitted, somewhat sheepishly, that I was obsessed with old black and white films. To my delight, he didn't laugh. Instead, he said his dad loved those too, and that they'd watch them together on weekends. It was such a simple, wholesome thing, but it made my heart swell. We talked about school, about the teachers we liked and the ones we didn't. He confessed that he hated gym class with a passion, and I laughed, relieved that I wasn't the only one who dreaded dodgeball. When we pulled into the parking lot of the diner, my nerves had settled into something softer, a kind of excited calm. Jason opened the door for me again, and I stepped out into the cool night air. The neon sign above the diner buzzed faintly, casting a pinkish glow over us. Inside, it was warm, filled with the hum of conversation and the clatter of dishes. The smell of burgers and fries and syrupy milkshakes wrapped around me, comforting and familiar. This was the kind of place where you could sit for hours and lose track of time. We slid into a booth by the window, the vinyl seats sticking slightly to my jeans, and I couldn't help but smile. Jason sat across from me, and for a second, I let myself just look at him. The soft fall of his hair over his forehead, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the nervous way he fidgeted with the edge of his menu. He was just as anxious as I was, and somehow that made everything feel okay. We ordered milkshakes, chocolate for him, strawberry for me, and shared a plate of fries. The conversation flowed easier than I'd expected. He told me about his dog, an overly friendly golden retriever named Duke, who thought he was a lapdog despite being 70 pounds. I told him about Katie, and how she'd practically dressed me for the date. We joked about the absurdity of our small-town life, about how everyone always seemed to know everyone else's business. At one point, I laughed so hard at one of his stories that I nearly snorted my milkshake through my nose. My cheeks burned with embarrassment, but Jason only laughed with me, and I realized I didn't care. It was fun. It was easy. It was exactly what I'd always imagined a first date would feel like. There was a moment, just a brief flicker of time, when I let myself believe that this night could be perfect. That maybe, just maybe, I could have this one thing that was mine, untainted by worry or fear or the ever-watchful eyes of my mother. I let myself sink into that feeling, savoring every second. But then, something shifted. It was small at first, almost imperceptible. A scent, a faint trace of perfume that I knew far too well. My mother's perfume. The one she always wore to church, or parent-teacher conferences, or any occasion where she felt the need to present herself just so. A soft floral blend with a sharp note of something citrusy. I froze, my fingers stilling on the straw of my milkshake, heart pounding in my ears. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, that lots of women wore perfume like that it was probably coming from the waitress, or one of the other diners. But then I caught it, just for a split second, a reflection in the window beside our booth. The outline of a figure standing near the entrance. Familiar. Too familiar. The slope of her shoulders, the way she held her purse in the crook of her arm. I blinked, and when I looked again, she was gone. Or maybe she'd never been there at all. Maybe my nerves were getting the better of me. Jason was in the middle of telling me about the time he tried a skateboard and ended up with a sprained wrist and a bruised ego. I forced myself to smile, to nod, to focus on his words, but my mind kept drifting back to that fleeting glimpse. That scent, that feeling. I tried to shake it off, tried to tell myself that even if she was here, maybe she was just passing by. Maybe she wasn't watching. Maybe she wasn't hovering, waiting to step in and take over. But the unease had settled into my bones, and no amount of laughter or sweet milkshake could wash it away. Still, I clung to the night. I clung to Jason's smile, to the way he made me feel seen, to the hope that I could still salvage this. That I could still have this one perfect memory of being young and free and on a date with a boy who liked me for me. I didn't want to let go of that. Not yet. Not ever. But in the back of my mind, a small voice whispered that the perfect night I dreamed of was already slipping through my fingers. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. I was just starting to let go. The unease that had gripped me since I first caught that faint whiff of my mom's perfume, since I saw her shadow outside the diner window, was beginning to fade. Jason's easygoing laugh, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about Duke, his goofy smile when I teased him about falling off a skateboard, all of it was pulling me back into the moment. For a few precious minutes, I forgot everything outside of the booth. I was just Emily, 16 years old, on her first date with a sweet, funny boy who liked her back. The world outside didn't matter, not when I was here, sharing this perfect evening. But then, I heard the door open. A rush of cool air swept through the diner, and for the briefest second, I thought maybe it was just a gust of wind or another set of customers arriving. I looked up, trying to focus on what Jason was saying, but my heart stopped when I saw the familiar figure standing near the entrance. My stomach twisted into knots as I recognized the sharp, confident way she moved, her familiar green coat swishing as she approached the table. I didn't even have time to react. One moment, Jason was looking at me, smiling as he shared a funny story about his little brother, and the next moment, my mom was pulling out a chair from the neighboring table and sitting down without so much as a second glance in my direction. She looked at Jason, her smile wide and too bright, but I could see the underlying tension in her eyes. "Good evening," she said, her voice too sweet, too forced. It was the kind of tone she used when she was trying to make herself seem approachable, trying to convince everyone around her that everything was fine, that she wasn't actually fuming inside. But I knew. I knew the smile was fake, the pleasantries hollow. Jason stiffened beside me, his confusion clear on his face. I felt his gaze flicker between my mom and me, probably trying to figure out why my mother was suddenly sitting at our table like it was the most normal thing in the world. I didn't even know what to do. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just sat there, frozen in place, as if somehow I could will this moment away. But it didn't work. "Hi," Jason finally said, his voice tight, unsure. He gave a polite smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He clearly had no idea what to make of the situation, and neither did I. Mom didn't seem fazed at all. She sat there like it was nothing. Casual, as if she were just joining us for dinner. She folded her hands on the table, her eyes flickering over to me as if nothing was wrong. As if it were normal for her to insert herself into my personal space at the worst possible moment. "So, Jason," Mom began, her voice syrupy sweet. "Tell me, what do you do for fun around here? I imagine there isn't much to do in a town like this." I wanted to crawl under the table. I wanted to disappear. I was so embarrassed, so furious, that I couldn't even process what she was doing. I couldn't believe it was happening. This was supposed to be my night, my chance to feel normal, to feel like a teenager on her first date. And now my mom was ruining it, ruining everything. Jason, bless his heart, was trying his best to navigate this conversation like he was actually okay with it. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but he didn't want to be rude. Well," he said, glancing over at me, his voice unsure. "I guess I play video games sometimes, but mostly just hang out with my friends." Mom nodded, her gaze never leaving him. Video games," she said, almost dismissively. "Isn't that just a waste of time? I mean, I'm sure there are better ways to spend your evenings than staring at a screen." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I wanted to scream at her to stop, to leave us alone, but I couldn't make a sound. My voice had completely abandoned me. Instead, I just stared at my lap, the heat in my cheeks rising with every word she spoke. Jason shifted in his seat again, his discomfort growing with every passing second. I could tell he was trying not to let this ruin the date, but I could feel the tension building between us. I could hear the awkwardness in his voice as he tried to steer the conversation away from anything too personal, anything that might give my mom more material to tear him apart with. "So, Emily tells me you're on the yearbook staff," my mom continued, her tone now laced with something that felt more like an interrogation than a conversation. Jason nodded, clearly unsure of how to respond. "Yeah, I do the photography for it. I'm kind of the unofficial photographer, I guess." "That's nice," Mom said, but there was something in her voice. "It must be nice to have something to do with your time, though I'm sure you could do more productive things than snapping photos all day." The comment stung, and I could feel Jason shrinking in his seat. He gave a tight-lipped smile and nodded, not sure how to respond. It was clear that my mom was undermining him, questioning everything he did, all while maintaining that sickeningly sweet smile. It was like she was on a mission to tear him down, to make him feel small, to make me feel embarrassed for even being interested in him. I felt my stomach twist into knots. The anger was bubbling up inside me, but there was no way to express it. The frustration, the embarrassment, the helplessness of being stuck in this nightmare of a situation. I wanted to shout, to say something, anything, that would make her leave us alone. But my voice betrayed me, and instead, I sat there in silence, the anger swirling within me like a storm. But it wasn't just Jason and me who were feeling the heat of my mom's presence. The diner, which had once felt warm and comforting, suddenly felt suffocating. I could feel the eyes of the other patrons on us, their whispers just loud enough for me to catch bits and pieces. A giggle here, a murmur there. The soft sounds of people gossiping, people judging. I could see the stares of my classmates, those from the nearby booth, the ones I tried to ignore but couldn't. I could feel the weight of their gazes, the way their eyes darted back and forth between me and my mom, between me and Jason. I could hear the snickers, the hushed comments, probably about how overbearing my mom was, or how awkward it must have been for me. The judgment felt suffocating, and I felt my face burn with humiliation. Jason must have felt it too, because he excused himself from the table to go to the restroom, leaving me alone with my mom. I could hear the soft clink of his boots against the diner floor as he walked away, and I wanted to scream after him, to tell him to run, to get as far away from this nightmare as possible. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there, trying to calm the storm that was raging inside me. "Emily," Mom said, her voice low now just for me. "You know I'm just trying to protect you, right?" I nodded without looking at her. "I know, Mom." But I didn't know. I didn't know why she was doing this, why she couldn't just let me have one moment to myself. I didn't know why she couldn't trust me to be with Jason, to experience this date without her looming over me like some kind of shadow. It was then that I realized this night was already ruined. My perfect first date, the one I dreamed about for months, was slipping through my fingers, and I couldn't do a thing to stop it. As Jason disappeared down the narrow hallway toward the restrooms, I sat there, heart pounding in my ears, staring at the sticky, worn surface of the diner table. I could see the faint scratches and doodles carved into the wood by bored customers over the years, and for a second, I envied them, the nameless people who had passed through this booth without incident, without their mothers crashing their first dates and turning their lives into public spectacles. I could feel Mom's eyes on me, that piercing gaze that always saw too much, always reached too deep. I took a deep breath, trying to summon every ounce of courage I had, and turned to face her. The fake sweetness had faded from her face now, replaced by a look of firm resolve. She wasn't here to ruin my night, I told myself. She didn't see it that way. In her mind, she was protecting me, but that didn't make it any easier to bear. "Mom," I said quietly, my voice trembling just enough that I hated myself for it. Please just go home. I'm fine. I can handle this." Her expression softened for a moment, and for a second I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd see how much this meant to me. But then she shook her head, that tight little smile returning to her lips. "Sweetheart, I am going home. Soon. I just wanted to check in. I'm just looking out for you. You know I can't sleep at night if I'm worried." I felt my hands ball into fists under the table, nails digging into my palms. "I told you where I'd be. You didn't have to follow me. This is so embarrassing." She tilted her head slightly, as if I'd hurt her feelings. "Embarrassing? I'm your mother. I care about you. Is it so terrible that I want to make sure this boy has good intentions? There are a lot of kids who make mistakes at your age. I'm just trying to keep you safe." I opened my mouth to argue, but Jason was already making his way back to the table, and the words died in my throat. I forced a smile, though I could feel my cheeks burning with frustration and shame. He slid back into his seat, glancing between us. I could see it in his eyes, the worry, the discomfort, the spark from earlier, the easy rhythm of our conversation, the shared laughter. It was all gone now, smothered by the awkwardness thick in the air. I tried to salvage it. I tried so hard. I forced myself to look at Jason, to ask him questions, to try to pick up the thread of our earlier banter. But it felt hollow now. Forced. Mom sat quietly for a minute or two, sipping at the water the waitress had brought for her uninvited guest, watching us with that all-seeing gaze that made my skin crawl. Every time Jason answered one of my questions, every time I tried to laugh or smile, I felt her judgment pressing down on me, as if she was silently critiquing every word, every glance, every moment. Jason did his best. He really did. He asked me about my favorite books again, tried to make a joke about the old jukebox in the corner of the diner, even complimented the strawberry milkshake that had long since melted in my glass. But I could see the way his eyes kept flicking to his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. I could see how he shifted in his seat, how he played with his straw, how he stopped meeting my gaze the way he had earlier. The easy confidence he'd shown when we first sat down was gone, replaced by something tighter, more guarded. And through it all, Mom sat there, her presence a wall between us that I couldn't scale, no matter how hard I tried. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake her, to beg her to see what she was doing to me, to Jason, to this night that was supposed to be mine. Instead, I just sat there, smiling a smile that didn't reach my eyes, asking questions I didn't care about the answers to, laughing at jokes that weren't funny anymore. Jason checked his phone again, then looked at me with an apologetic smile. Hey, I just realized it's getting kinda late, he said, his voice gentle but distant. I should probably get going soon. My mom's expecting me home. My heart sank. I knew it wasn't about the time. It wasn't about his mom. It was about my mom, sitting right there, destroying any chance we had at salvaging the night. But I nodded, pretending to understand, pretending that this wasn't killing me inside. Yeah, sure, I said, my voice small. Of course. I could feel the tears burning at the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not now. Not in front of Jason. Not in front of her. Then, just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, Mom reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Oh, before you go, Jason, let me show you this adorable photo of Emily when she was a baby, she said brightly, swiping through her camera roll. She had the cutest chubby cheeks. Everyone used to say she looked like a little doll. You'd never guess, looking at her now, but she used to run around in the backyard with no clothes on, just her diaper. We could barely keep anything on her. I felt the blood drain from my face. Mom, no, I said, my voice breaking. But she ignored me, holding the phone out for Jason to see. And Jason, poor sweet Jason, leaned over and looked, offering a polite laugh that sounded forced, strained, like he was just trying to be nice. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I wanted to disappear, to escape this nightmare, this humiliation that seemed to have no end. When Jason finally stood to leave, he thanked me for the night, his smile kind but distant. I walked him to the door, my heart heavy, my mind reeling. He promised to text me, but I could hear the finality in his voice, see it in his eyes. The moment he stepped out into the night, I turned back to Mom, the tears I'd been holding back finally spilling over. Why? I whispered. Why couldn't you just let me have this? She didn't answer right away. Just looked at me, her face softening, as if she really didn't understand what she'd done. As if she truly believed she'd been doing the right thing. And that hurt most of all, because no matter how much I wanted her to see, I knew she never would. The door to the diner swung shut behind Jason, the small bell above it jingling one last time as he stepped out into the night. I watched him go, my breath catching in my throat as his figure grew smaller, swallowed by the darkness beyond the neon glow of the diner sign. I stood frozen at the entrance for a long moment, the cool night air brushing against my flushed cheeks, mixing with the tears that now rolled freely down my face. He didn't look back. He didn't wave. And deep down, I knew he wouldn't text. Not tonight. Not ever. I turned back toward the booth where my mom still sat, finishing the last of the water she hadn't even ordered, as if she hadn't just dismantled the first date of my life. As if she hadn't just humiliated me in front of the boy I'd liked for months. The boy who, for a brief and magical hour, had made me feel special, seen, and just normal. My chest ached with the weight of it all. I felt like the fragile little dream I'd been holding so tightly had been crushed in her hands, carelessly, as though it had never mattered at all. Come on, Emily, Mom said, standing and slipping on her coat like we'd just finished a pleasant family dinner. Let's head home. It's getting late. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My throat felt tight, my heart beating so hard I thought I might collapse right there on the sticky diner floor. But my legs moved on autopilot, carrying me out into the parking lot, where Mom's silver SUV waited like some monstrous symbol of everything I just lost. We climbed in, the door shutting with a final, hollow thunk that echoed in my ears. The silence in the car was deafening. I stared out the window, watching the small town blur past, my reflection in the glass pale and hollow-eyed. The diner lights faded into the distance, and with them went any hope I'd had of salvaging the night. Mom kept glancing at me from the corner of her eye, as if expecting me to say something, to thank her maybe, or to acknowledge her presence. But I said nothing. I let the silence grow thick between us, hoping it would smother the fury rising inside me, the heartbreak that felt too big to contain. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft, as if trying to soothe me. I know you're upset, Emily, but I had to do what I thought was best. I couldn't just sit at home and wonder what was going on. I was worried about you. I let out a bitter laugh, one that sounded foreign even to my own ears. Worried about me? I repeated, my voice shaking. You embarrassed me in front of him. You ruined everything, Mom. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel. I could see her knuckles whiten in the glow of the dashboard lights. I didn't ruin anything. I was protecting you. That's what mothers do. Someday you'll understand that. I bit my lip, so hard I tasted blood, willing myself not to scream. I didn't want to give her that satisfaction. I didn't want her to see just how deep her words had cut, but I couldn't stop the tears that kept falling, silent and hot, tracing paths down my cheeks. You don't trust me, I whispered finally, my voice breaking. You don't think I can handle anything on my own. I'm 16, Mom. I'm not a little kid anymore. Her voice grew sharper, defensive now. You're a kid, Emily. You're my kid, and I've seen what can happen. Boys only want one thing at this age. I'm not going to sit back and let you make mistakes you'll regret. Her words hit me like a slap, and I turned to face her, my eyes blazing with hurt and fury. You don't even know him. Jason is a good person. He's kind. He actually likes me. Or at least, he did before tonight. Mom sighed, as if I was being unreasonable, as if my heartbreak was just teenage drama that she had no patience for. You're too young to understand. You'll thank me someday, Emily. When you're older. When you see that I was right to look out for you. Thank you, I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts. Thank you for what? For humiliating me? For making sure I never get asked out again? For making me feel like I can't trust you with anything important? The words hung between us, heavy and raw. Mom's jaw clenched, and for a second, I thought she might yell back. But instead, she just shook her head, as if I was the one who didn't get it. As if I was the one who was wrong. We pulled into our driveway, the porch light casting a pool of yellow over the front steps. I didn't wait for the car to fully stop before I yanked open the door and stepped out, my boots crunching against the gravel. I slammed the door behind me, not caring how loud it was, not caring that the neighbors might hear. I just needed to get away from her, from the suffocating weight of this night. Inside the house, I stormed up to my room, the familiar creak of the stairs beneath my feet somehow making everything feel worse. I threw myself onto my bed, burying my face in my pillow, letting the sobs I'd held back finally escape. I cried for Jason, for the date that could have been, for the memory that was supposed to be sweet but would now forever be tainted by shame and regret. I cried for the trust I'd lost in my mom, for the invisible wall that now stood between us, taller and thicker than ever. Downstairs, I could hear the soft clatter of dishes as Mom busied herself in the kitchen, probably trying to act like everything was fine, like this was just another ordinary night. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. I felt betrayed, trapped in a house that no longer felt like home, by a mother who no longer felt like my protector, but my jailer. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening in painful detail. Jason's nervous smile, the way his eyes had lit up when we'd first sat down, the laughter we'd shared over milkshakes, and then the way that light had slowly dimmed, smothered by Mom's presence, by her questions, by the weight of her judgment. I thought about texting him, about trying to explain, to apologize for something that wasn't even my fault. But I knew it wouldn't matter. The magic was gone. The moment had passed, and no amount of words could bring it back. As dawn crept through the window, I made myself a silent promise. I would never forget this night. And I would never, ever let her take something like this from me again. It's been nearly a decade since that night, the night I thought would be my first real taste of freedom, of romance, of stepping into the world as my own person. I'm 26 now. I have my own apartment, my own career, my own life carved out in a city far from that small town where I grew up. I've learned a lot since then, about love, about boundaries, about the messy, complicated relationship between a mother and daughter. And yet, sometimes, when the city is quiet and I catch the scent of strawberries on the breeze, or hear the jingle of a diner door, I'm transported right back to that sticky vinyl booth, to the weight of my mother's gaze, to the hollow ache of a night that wasn't mine. I think about that evening more than I like to admit. Not because of Jason, we never spoke again, not really. A few awkward messages in the days after, both of us trying to pretend it hadn't been as terrible as it was. But the truth was, that night had broken whatever fragile connection we'd started to build. He wasn't cruel about it, wasn't unkind. He just drifted away, and I let him. We were 16. We were still kids. And the magic that could have been was smothered before it had a chance to breathe. I don't blame him. I don't even really blame myself. The truth is, I didn't know then how to stand up for myself, how to claim space in my own life without fear of disappointing the person who'd always loomed so large over it. That night became one of those defining moments, the kind that burrows into your bones and shapes the way you move through the world. I didn't realize it at the time, but it planted the first seeds of the woman I would become. The girl who walked out of that diner was ashamed, heartbroken, and furious. The woman I am now remembers that girl with tenderness, with compassion. She was doing her best, and she was learning. For a long time after that night, I struggled with boundaries. Not just with my mom, but with everyone. I was so used to being watched, judged, protected to the point of suffocation, that I didn't know how to trust myself. I second-guessed every decision, afraid of making a mistake, afraid of letting someone down. I dated boys who were safe, who didn't challenge me, who were so careful not to overstep that I couldn't feel much of anything at all. And when those relationships inevitably faded, I told myself it was better that way. No risk, no heartbreak, but also no joy. It wasn't until college that things began to shift. Being away from home, even just a few hours' drive, gave me the distance I hadn't known I needed. I started therapy, mostly because a friend gently suggested it after watching me crumble over a minor disagreement with a professor. I sat on that worn couch in a tiny campus counseling office and for the first time, said out loud the words I'd been holding inside since that night. I felt powerless. I felt invisible. I felt like I didn't matter. And from there, I started to rebuild. Slowly, painfully, But surely, my relationship with my mom was rocky through those years. I stopped telling her things, at first out of spite, then out of self-preservation. I loved her, God, I loved her, but I didn't trust her with my heart. We talked, we visited, but I kept her at arm's length. When she'd ask about my friends, my classes, the boys I dated, I'd give her the version of the story that was safe, that wouldn't invite questions or judgment. It was lonely in a way, but it felt necessary. It wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that we started to find our way back to each other. It wasn't one conversation or one grand gesture that did it. It was 1,000 small moments, the day she asked about my job without offering advice if I hadn't asked for. The time she listened, really listened, when I told her about a breakup, without telling me what I should have done differently. The way she started to say, "I'm proud of you," instead of, "You should have." We've talked, since then, about that night. Not in great detail. Some things are still too tender, but enough. She told me she thought she was doing the right thing. That she was scared. That letting go felt impossible. And I've told her that it hurt me, that it left scars I'm still learning to heal. We're both works in progress. But we're trying. And that counts for something. Jason is a memory now. A sweet boy with kind eyes who gave me my first taste of what it felt like to be chosen, to be seen. Sometimes I wonder where he is, if he remembers that night at all. Maybe he tells the story at parties, the cautionary tale of the girl whose mom crashed their date. Or maybe, like me, he thinks of it only in quiet moments, with a mix of fondness and regret. I hope he's well. I hope he found the magic we didn't get to have. If you're listening to this, if you're a teenager with a mom or a dad or anyone who tries to hold you too tightly, I want you to know something. I see you. I was you. And I know how lonely it feels. How unfair. How small. But I also know that it doesn't have to define you. You will learn to speak up. You will learn to set boundaries, and it will feel terrifying at first, but it will also feel like freedom. And you deserve that freedom. You deserve to write your own story, to have your own nights, your own moments, untouched by anyone else's fears. It won't be easy. There will be fights. There will be tears. There will be nights when you wonder if it's even worth it. But it is. I promise you it is. And someday, you'll look back at the younger version of yourself with pride. Not because she had all the answers, but because she kept going. Because she tried. I don't regret that night anymore. I regret that it happened the way it did, sure. But I don't regret what it taught me. Because that night was the beginning of me learning who I am. And I wouldn't trade that for anything.